5, 4, 3.
The changing world of ideas as seen through the eyes of leading universities. This is Concept.
This is the temple of the giant Jaguar, which soars over the great plaza of Tikal. Here, almost 2,000 years ago, the ancient Mayas built a strange civilization, a civilization that reached astonishing heights and then mysteriously disappeared. 1,000 years ago, the jungle overran the great plaza once again, and Tikal became the place of the whispering voices.
Here, in the greatest wilderness of Central America, in the vast rainforest of Guatemala, lie the mysterious ruins of Tikal. Here, giant trees reach for the sun 200 feet above the jungle floor. Enormous vines, like living cables, interlace the branches from which spider monkeys swing through the forest. The air is filled with the sweet fragrance of unseen flowers and the shrill cries of the monkeys and tropical birds. The foliage seethes with hidden life. Deadly coral snakes coiled in the dense undergrowth, alligators, wild boar, and jaguar. From the air, these stone skyscrapers pierce the tropical wilderness, temples 20 stories high. 2,000 years ago in this awesome place, a civilized yet savage people built a city of stone that rose above the jungle. Until 7 years ago, Tikal lay buried in forest, and with it the secrets of a great past, a strange people, and a peak of civilization. Now, scientists and scholars are stripping away the jungle growth to reveal the palaces, temples, and tombs of the vanished Mayans. Centuries ago, this great plaza thronged with thousands of people celebrating a religious ritual to their gods. High above were the priests, elaborately costumed in woven textiles, brilliant feathers, and precious jade. The air was thick with the heady incense of copal as the priests slowly mounted the steps leading to the very top of the pyramid temples, where the human sacrifice was being prepared. For Tikal was a religious city. Here the Mayans, mysterious Indians of Central America, built a monumental city for their gods. Here an elaborate and complex society developed, utilizing the Mayans' unique skills in architecture, mathematics, and astronomy. Tikal was a theocracy, with all power and learning in the hands of the priests, while the peasants sustained the society with the cultivation of corn. Tikal was an isolated civilization, without the knowledge of the wheel, metal tools, or beasts of burden. Yet they maintained wide trade throughout Middle America and developed the most advanced culture in all the Americas. Guiding our concept cameras through Tikal is Dr. Froelich Rainey, professor of archaeology at the University of Pennsylvania and director of the University Museum, which has been conducting the excavation of these ancient ruins. Beneath our feet, covered by jungle and mold, lie unknown structures, at least 5 or 6 square miles of causeways, temples, ball courts, palaces, and simple houses. The actual extent of the city is still unknown, but the great central structures with their courts and surrounding pyramids are being explored and mapped. We're climbing now over 5 tiers of buildings completely overgrown below us as we approach one of the ancient palaces. This topmost building has recently been cleared of forest. In Mayan times, this 5-tiered structure stood at the edge of a great reservoir which separated the northern and southern parts of the city. Such reservoirs caught the rainwater 6 feet in the wet season, which carried the Mayans through the dry season.
I wish we knew more about the function of such structures as this. We call them palaces because we think that they were used by the priests either as living quarters or as robing rooms or perhaps as offices. But there's nothing been found in the building so far to disprove or prove this theory. You may be surprised at the small size of the rooms and the massive walls. This is because the Maya always used the corbel arch, and with that they had to have a heavy wall and small rooms. Then here this curious business of the beams in the corbelled arch. They have no structural significance as far as we can tell, and yet they always appear in these rooms of this size and form, and in the arch. What are they used for? We have not much of any idea. They're made of zapote, this iron-hard wood which grows in the tropical forest and which preserves almost indefinitely. We're now back in the great plaza, Master Rose, with the lineup of stone monuments. The main plaza of Tikal, the center of the city.
These monuments look almost as if they're standing guard, Dr. Rainey, in front of the temple.
Well, all of them are associated with temples or structures here, and the curious part about it is that they are time markers. They're set up to commemorate a festival, an occasion, a time period. And you know, the Maya have a very curious idea about time. Time and units, they think of it as a kind of a burden, and certain gods carry the burden for a certain period. Unusual. I don't know of any other primitive people who have this strange interest in time and their conception of time.
And they carried it out in this highly developed calendrical system, too, didn't they?
Yes, of course, because that's the basis of the calendrical system, is this conception of the units of time, which are, as I say, burden. For example, under this altar in which we're sitting, they found a cache of small, not ivory, but obsidian blades. And on the backs of these blades are engraved the figures of gods, and we call them the 9 Lords of Night.
The lovely phrase.
And the idea is that each one of these gods carries a burden of time for a certain unit of time. This is the reflection of the idea I was trying to say. And these monuments, of course, are always connected with time, and each one has some sort of date on it.
So if I look at the monument behind us, is that a time figure, or does he merely mark a ceremonial that took place?
Well, we think this is a priest or a priest ruler. It's very difficult to make out because it's very complex relief sculpture, as you can see. But all that monkey business on top is feathers, a very elaborate feather headdress. Then around his neck is an elaborate neck piece. He's dressed in feathers and in woven cloth. He has anklets. And then hanging all about him are all kinds of regalia and paraphernalia. The date on this would be on the side or the back, usually on the side. The date glyphs.
What date is this particular monument?
Well, I don't know about this monument in this one in particular, but it's certainly classic period, which is sometime before 700 A.D.
When they were originally put up, Dr. Rainey, were they all done in this white and by now weathered white and black relief, or were they painted?
No, I think they were probably all painted. Some of them were plastered, and they were painted in bright colors, probably realistic colors. Those feathers on his headdress were probably parrots or egrets, and they were painted in reds and blues and yellows. And, of course, all these monuments you see here, which are blank, which have no carving on them at all, probably were plastered with white plaster, and then the figures painted on them, and the dates painted on and painted glyphs.
Of course, that would have washed away over the centuries.
Yes, that's our assumption. As a matter of fact, in one of these temples up here, Temple 34, which we call the Temple of the Red Stele, we found a broken stele in there which was painted red with cinnabar. And we've got various ideas from the wall paintings, the tombs, and so on, that they used in many bright colors on these stela as well as on the buildings.
Oh, but there's a smaller stela, and the relief seems a little bit more clear.
Let's have a
Look at that.
These glyphs on this one, Marshal Rose, are unusually well preserved and high relief, as you commented. You see, this is, I said before, the date glyphs or figures carved in relief are usually on the sides of these monuments, or stele. And you can see here some of the separate figures which we refer to as glyphs. Most of them are the heads of gods or divinities, which represent symbols of which we can read as they signal. The ones I understand, only ones I can be sure of, are date signs, are those with bars and dots. Which
what does the bar stand for?
5 and a dot for 1. But otherwise, I'm not familiar enough with the conjugal system or the symbols in the conjugal system to read a date like this. Although several people here, of course, do. This one is probably dated, as the other one, sometime in the classical period, let's say between 300 or 400 AD and 700 AD.
Dr. Rainey, I noticed that the figure on the front of the monument has had his face obliterated. Is there any significance to that?
We don't really know what the significance is, but it's curious that a number of monuments here with those figures on them have the face obliterated. Also, there are several monuments which have been purposely broken and destroyed and spread around. Certainly it's done on purpose.
Would that possibly be a key to the reason why the Mayans suddenly disappeared?
A lot of us think one of the reasons why the Mayans disappeared is because they had some sort of social upheaval or turmoil or revolt of the peasants or whatever it was. And the fact that a lot of monuments have been purposely broken and that the faces have been destroyed or disfigured is a suggestion, at least, that there was some sort of upset in the social system. So you see, obviously, the people who ran this were the priest rulers who had all the learning, and below them were a great mass of workers. And it's possible that they just revolted and knocked off the rulers, and the whole civilization disappeared.
When you think of just obliterating the face, because the rest of the body remains, it also makes you think possibly that it's a god who's fallen into disfavor or a hero figure who isn't popular anymore.
Well, I suppose it could be. You see, I remember I said these were all time markers.
Yes.
And it could be that at the end of a certain time period, you obliterate the god who represents that time period, and you knock his face off when you set up a new one. But it does seem very strange that you get the whole monument destroyed, as if there was actually some intention to destroy the past.
Most of the stelae here in the Great Plaza have altars in front of them, such as the one we were sitting on just a moment ago. Did ceremonials take place on those altars with a sacrifice?
Sorry, again, I have to say we don't really know. We have no idea they're really altars. They're just called that. And they're not calendar stones, as the round stones in Mexico, some of them are. We do know they performed human sacrifice here, but there's no evidence that they performed the sacrifice on these so round stones, which are always associated with the monument. I would assume that the sacrifices took place in temples around.
Way on the top of the pyramid.
That's the idea. Because these Maya weren't quite as bloodthirsty as the Mexicans, but they still performed human sacrifice. The idea of an altar is sort of natural because they always stand in front of these monuments. They're round, flat stones, and carved and engraved in many cases. But their actual use is unknown. We do know they have these dedication caches under most of them, or by the stele, so that when they're set up, they make some offering to the gods.
Who were the builders of this great city and strange civilization? Were the Mayans really the descendants of ancient Stone Age people who migrated from Asia to America at Bering Strait in Alaska many thousands of years ago? People who created a unique society in complete isolation from the old world? Perhaps so. But recent discoveries on the Pacific coast of Guatemala and Ecuador suggest that there were voyages across the Pacific long before Columbus, and that human contacts between the old and the new worlds began centuries before the time of Christ. The smothering jungle quickly devours man's traces. This path, cut by the archaeologists, must be freshly cleared each year after the rainy season. The foliage is so dense that one does not dare to stray even a few feet from the path for fear of being hopelessly lost. And to be lost in this jungle means death. The tropical climate is the same today in the rainforest as it was when the Mayans cleared their fields, quarried their limestone blocks for buildings, and with human muscle alone erected these vast monuments. We are approaching the back of a temple which rests upon a buried pyramid, Carvings in stone often are found on the exterior walls of temples. The meaning of the symbols is still unknown. This figure, which resembles crossed bones, is not surprising among a people who were preoccupied with death. We are now walking through a group of 16 temples, built shortly after the time of Christ. Here, archaeologists are searching for tombs, monuments, and written inscriptions, all vital clues in the reconstruction of civilization.
Here inside a pyramid, we have a monument in mint condition, found in an ancient temple buried inside the pyramid, walled up with stone. It has been beautifully preserved. That's why you see these glyphs in such sharp and clear relief, and all the details, the faces. Here on the side of the face of the monument is a figure, a priest figure with a headdress of feathers, a necklace, probably representing a jade necklace, earplugs, and again with a face slightly damaged, as if it were done on purpose, something we find in various monuments in such temples. This temple was an old ancient temple built over again when they built a new pyramid on top.
As archaeologists probe the secrets of the Mayan civilization at Tikal, they hope to find the remains of the earliest constructions of the city. Just north of the Great Plaza, in the shadow of the Temple of the Giant Jaguar, lies the Acropolis, which is one of the oldest groups of temples in this vast ceremonial center. Here may lie the explanation of the founding of the city.
We are now in an archaeological sounding cut right into the heart of the North Acropolis. That is to the north of the main plaza, main square of the city, and we're facing the oldest temple found here so far, buried beneath the lower one. Let's sit down and I'll tell you about it.
All right. Dr. Rainey, what is it you're hoping to find through this archaeological cut or sounding?
Well, here we think, we did think at the beginning, that in this Acropolis, to the north of the plaza, we would find the oldest remains at Tikal. And of course, we're trying to figure out who the Maya are, where they came from, their history, and so on. And here we've got a deep, deep cut, dug all the way through all these buildings, and you can see how we have discovered earlier and earlier buildings, like this temple we're sitting on.
So actually, they built one temple upon another, didn't they?
Yes, they constructed them sort of like onions. You see, the older temples are inside and the younger temples on the outside. But one of the nice things about making a cut like this, which I think you will see, you see that line along the wall there?
Yes.
Well, that's a floor level cut through during the excavation. And that is a solid floor which goes right across the cut, or did. And that marks a level which is just about the time of Christ. Now, when you find pottery below that solid floor, you know it must have been made
Prior to that time.
prior to that time. We know that kind of pottery, and we find that in these different levels all the way up, different types of construction as we go up. And so you can reconstruct not only the architectural history of this Acropolis, but you can reconstruct the culture from period to period.
And the age of the people. Actually, you had thought at first that this was a people that started to thrive around about 200, 300 AD. Now you know that they go back to the time of Christ.
Yes, and there's pits back here below the level we're on now. We go back to about 300 BC, and we have about 15 feet to go below where we're now sitting, or where we're now standing. And we think that we'll get back to some hundreds of years before Christ. We can't tell yet, but we could go back in a site like this to, let's say, 600, 700, or 800 years before Christ.
It's a staggering thought. Dr. Rainey, what was it that the Mayans were doing as they built these temples, one on top of the other?
Well, again, I think it's got something to do with time periods. They're very conscious of time and a strange conception of time. And every so often, not in regular periods, they destroyed one temple and built another over it. Or they left it half standing and built a bigger temple on top. Or let's put it this way, they put a pyramid structure and a temple on top of that. And you can see on the sides of this wall several stages of reconstruction on this Acropolis.
Actually, as you look at the wall, it's almost marching all the way up through the centuries.
Well, this is a sort of time chart itself. You're looking at a cut like this. But you know, it's very strange. From here up to the top of this whole Acropolis does not represent very many actual years of construction. They must have built very fast, because Here we're on a level of about the time of Christ. The top of this cut is early classic period, which is, say, 500, 600 at latest, maybe 400 A.D. So all this construction that you see here, reconstruction, took place in about 300 or 400 years.
Must have taken a tremendous workforce to build buildings like this.
Yes, particularly when you think that they cut all this stone of which this is made with stone tools. They had no metal, and they had to form all these stones, cut them out of the quarry, shape them, and fit them into these structures. And then, of course, you see all these facades, like on this temple we're sitting on. They are stone structures plastered over and painted. So you must have had a very gay look at this temple of many colors.
What colors would you say?
Oh, I would think reds and blues and yellows, perhaps. Bright colors, certainly. We know from the facades like this that the construction, the basic construction of the figures, the masked figures on the front, were in stone, and then they were plastered over to get a smooth face, and then painted in bright colors.
Dr. Rainey, this whole area of the Grand Plaza and Northern Acropolis has to do with the priestly functions. Where did the non-priests live?
Well, we've dug house sites all around this site now, and the ordinary people lived all over here, all around, out in the country, and so on.
Sort of a suburban approach to the mine?
Well, you know, they always call these ceremonial centers, as if they're only priests and craftsmen and so on, a great ritual center like a Buddhist Wat. But actually, we find that people live all over here, so that I think you can honestly or simply call this a city, with its main function, administration, religion, ceremonial affairs for the people living all around the country.
What have you been able to learn about the nature of their religion and the ceremonies attending it?
Well, of course, the most we learn is from the figures of the priests and the sculptures, from the caches with the 9 lords of night I spoke about, and so on. And, of course, the temples themselves, the functions of the temples themselves. But we do know a good deal or something about religion from the accounts of the early Spanish who first came into this country and left us some record of the religious ideas and beliefs of the people.
A many-god concept.
There's always many gods. Gods of time periods, gods of seasons, gods for various functions, and so on.
Even god of the rain in an area that had so very much rainfall.
There must have been a very important god for the growing of corn, since that was the basis of all the life here.
The diggers have learned that each one of these giant pyramids were built over a tomb, probably the tomb of a priest or ruler, containing his bones and often those of young people buried with him. In order to reach the hidden tombs, archaeologists had to cut tunnels through the solid rock of the pyramid. These tunnels disclose that the pyramids had been rebuilt periodically, perhaps when the chief priest of the temple died. This tunnel is underneath the temple of the giant Jaguar, which was rebuilt at least 3 times, larger and higher each time. This deep tunnel will lead us to one of the richest tombs found so far at Tikal. Until now it is the only tomb discovered in this pyramid, but the search continues for the additional 2 tombs the archaeologists assume must be here. Now we're looking down into a tomb that has not been opened for 1,200 years. There was great wealth buried with this priest. Jade, not gold, was the most precious possession. But the most exciting discovery here is a pile of bird bones, engraved with Mayan glyphs and with pictures of masked figures and strange boats, a unique discovery in Mayan archaeology. There are many mysteries to the Mayan world which disappeared here 1,000 years ago. The secrets of the past are not easy to wrest from this primitive forest. But the temples of Tikal were built to endure, and rising as they do in this wild and unlikely place, they furnish the key to a lost world of incredible achievement in science, mathematics, astronomy, a world of a religious and peaceful people who cultivated maize and carved stone with stone. The enigma of the ancient Mayans, who rose mysteriously and vanished mysteriously, may one day be solved by the whispering voices of Tikal.